Now we're going to move away from the organelles and we're going to talk about some of the other inclusions in the cell. And in this part, we're going to talk about the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is, well, cyto means cell and skeleton means skeleton. It's the thing that gives the cell shape. It also provides a system of pathways for moving things around inside the cell. So here is an image of cells in which the cytoskeleton fibers have been stained different color, so yellow and white. So all the yellow and white that you see are the strands of the cytoskeleton. Now, we don't usually show them when we show a diagram of the cell because they just take up so much space. You wouldn't be able to see the details of everything else. But just know that in all the cells, there are cytoskeleton fibers. It's a network of protein fibers, really long, thin strands that give the cell its shape and make pathways for moving things. So I'm going to show you a GIF, play GIF. There we go. Okay. So what this is this green strand along the bottom is a strand of the cytoskeleton. Okay, just like these little thin lines in this cell, this is a animation of a cytoskeleton strand. This orange thing is what we call a motor protein. Motor just means that it moves. So a motor protein is a protein that either moves itself or changes shape and causes something else to move. In this case, the motor protein is attached to this big green ball back here, which is a vesicle. And all these little green things that are moving around, those are the phospholipid bilayer that surrounds the vesicle. And then we have these little molecules stuck on it. Those are the tags that the Golgi apparatus put on the vesicle so that the motor protein could take it where it needs to go, and then it would bind to something when it gets there and know to stop. Isn't that kind of cool? I think that's so cool. Anyway, I also love that they made the motor protein kind of do this little shift, like a little funky step when it walks. I think I like that. Anyway, so the point is the cytoskeleton, which is the little road that the motor protein walks along. Now, the cytoskeleton is actually made up of a few different types of fibers. I don't need you to know the names of these fibers, okay? But if it helps to see this written out for what they do, then by all means use this. Just know that the cytoskeleton is going to maintain the shape of the cell, move things around inside the cell, and then there's a specific part of it called the centrosome. That's going to move the chromosomes around when the cell does mitosis. Don't worry about it. We don't have to learn mitosis in this class. I am going to show you a cell changing its cytoskeleton in order to change the shape of the cell. This is an amoeba moving by what we call amoeboid movement. Hello? Where did you go? There you are. Hopefully you can still see this. And so you can see that this plasma membrane is extending out on the right side. And then all this little bubbly stuff, that's the cytoplasm inside. These are the organelles and the inclusions and all of that. And then on the left side, these parts are getting smaller. So what the cell is doing is it is taking, whoops. No, that's not what I want at all. I want to rewatch it. Oh, never mind. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, well, you saw it. Anyway, you did see it. What happened to my... I really messed this up, didn't I? Hopefully I can edit this out, but I'll be honest, I probably won't. Anyway, so that's amoeboid movements. That's the same way that the neutrophil moves. Parts of the cytoskeleton get removed from one place, put in and built in another place to extend the plasma membrane so that the cell can move in that direction. That's your cytoskeleton. All right, now the cytoskeleton also provides support for extensions or what we call projections of the cell membrane. And there are three types that I want you to know. Now, this diagram makes it look like you see these three on the same cell, and we don't. But this is the only diagram I could find that showed all three of them. So here you go. Three types: microvilli, cilia, and flagella. So microvilli are found on cells lining your digestive system. So there are these larger structures called villi, and the cells that line the surface of the villi are covered with these microvilli that make what we call a brush border, because it literally looks like the hairs on a brush. And the microvilli, they do not move. They're just extensions of the membrane that give extra surface area so that these cells can absorb the nutrients from the digestive system. So microvilli don't move. They're really tiny, and they just provide extra surface area. In some cases, they also provide extra surface area for secretion. In your body, in the digestive system, the most important function is for absorption of nutrients. That's microvilli. Now, the next ones are cilia. They're also pretty small. They're very, very numerous whenever they're present. And you can see them here on this edge of these cells, this little like furry border. These are cilia, and they move back and forth like oars on a boat, pushing the water and making a current. So in our bodies, cilia are always used to move particles through tubes. So you have cilia inside your respiratory system, and you have cilia inside either the vas deferens or the fallopian tube to move the sperm and the egg to the places where they're going to go. So they move in waves and make a current to move things past the cell, right? So I'm going to show you this. Hopefully this one plays. Please play. This is an image looking through the trachea, which is the windpipe. So we're looking at a cross section of a trachea. Here's the fluid inside, which no, there shouldn't be. This is just in a lab. Oh no, don't replay. Okay. And you can see that these all around the edge here, there are these tiny little structures, and they are making waves and causing that current that's moving the fluid in a circle. Now, you do have fluid lining your trachea, and it actually, there's some mucus on that, and that mucus catches dust. And then the movement created by this cilia actually helps to move that mucus up and out of your lungs so that dust doesn't get trapped in the bottom of your lungs, which honestly pretty cool. Okay, then the third type is called a flagellum. The plural is flagella. And this is going to move more like a whip or a propeller. And it is used to move the cell. Okay, so the cilia moves material past the cell, but the cell stays in place. The flagellum moves the cell. The only human cell that has a flagellum is a sperm cell. That's how it swims. The tail of the sperm is a flagellum. There are a bunch of protists that use flagella to swim, and like we saw, there are some bacteria that use flagella to swim. There are some protists that have more than one, but flagella, there's usually only one. Sometimes there's two, but usually only one. Whereas cilia, there's tons of them. There's never just one cilium, okay? So cilia, the cell stays put, and the cilia moves fluid past the cell. Flagellum, it moves like a whip, and it propels the cell through fluid. So this diagram down at the bottom shows the movement of the flagellum, like whipping in a circle, like a propeller, and then the cilia going back and forth, beating more like oars, okay? All right, I'm gonna do a quick summary of the cell here in this video. So as you remember, cell is the most basic unit of life. surrounded by a plasma membrane, and that plasma membrane is a phospholipid bilayer. And you remember that the head is hydrophilic and the tail is hydrophobic, right? There are lots of ways that things can be transported across a membrane, but not everything can be transported across the membrane. The largest structure inside most cells is the nucleus. That's where the DNA is, and that's what controls what goes on in the cell. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum makes lipids and breaks down sugars and breaks down toxins. The rough endoplasmic reticulum makes proteins that will be used inside a membrane or in a membrane. The free ribosomes make proteins that will be in the cytoplasm, like the cytoskeleton. So the cytoskeleton is made by free ribosomes. Mitochondria make ATP, which the cell uses for energy. And the cytoskeleton gives the cell its structure and makes pathways for things to move around the cell. And that is everything you need to know about cells.